Good morning, everybody. My name is Larry Sashin. I am the senior partner and founder of L. Sashin and Associates. L. Sashin and Associates, along with Total Food Service and Valiant Technologies, are bringing you today's virtual breakfast sessions. Today's session is going to be on avoiding doom. You know, as anybody knows who's been involved in a restaurant or even has gone to a restaurant in the last 18 to 20 months has noticed things have changed. Food prices have gone up. Service has gotten slower. Um, Tables have been moved apart and closer together. The one thing that has happened over the last 18 to 20 months is change, and not much of it for the good. So what we're going to be doing today is talking about avoiding doomsday. How does a restaurant change to stay afloat and actually deliver service and food and an experience that was at least close to what it was back in the days before COVID? Will, you've been opening restaurants in hotels all through the pandemic. I'd like you to start and give your take on what's going on. And by the way, before we go, I almost did it again. Will, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Will Sears. I'm a partner and co-founder of Field Trip New York. So we've got 3 restaurants in Manhattan. Separate from that, I oversee as executive VP the hotel division for Ring on Hook. So we've got 22 boutique hotels that we run food and beverage for throughout the US.
Thank you. Peter.
Good morning, Peter Herrero, New York Hospitality Group. We are from black tie events to barbecues with a 90-year-old restaurant in the middle. And as of the pandemic and just before it, we're an organic cafe for hospitals.
Okay. Yvonne.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Ivan. I'm chef and founder of Akin Hospitality. We run and operate restaurants within New York City and Queens. Just took over an event venue, wedding venue out in Forest Hills. And yeah, I'm excited to be here. Morning.
Morning. All right. Fred.
Good morning. I'm Fred Klassman. I'm the editor and publisher of Total Food Service. We cover the restaurant and food service industry in New York and across the nation. Welcome, everybody.
Okay. I am going to remove spotlight so we can see everybody here, and we're going to keep recording. 1 second. Let's look at the gallery. We're going to do it a little different today. Okay. So let's go back to, there's Nick. Nick Livanos, introduce yourself, please.
Morning, everybody. I'm Nick Livanos. I'm a partner at First Generation Scarsdale, which runs via Forno wood-fired pizza, and lifelong restaurateur.
Okay, so let's go back to the initial question. Will, how are you coping with all these changes and keeping and still able to put out a good product?
Larry, is it all right if I first talk about like what these changes are and what the challenges are?
Great, define them.
So you and I connected a couple of weeks ago after doing a couple of great breakfast sessions. Great guys like Nick and Peter and everybody else that's on this call today. And I said to you, well, there's this elephant in the room that nobody's talking about, which is the fact that all of our cost of goods, the prices are going up. Our wine costs are growing up because gas is going up and distribution's going up. And labor is substantially shorted, And so since we started these breakfast sessions, we opened, right before we started the breakfast sessions, we opened Field Trip in Rockefeller Plaza and Long Island City. And then since we started these breakfast sessions, I've opened 2 restaurants, Milos at the Venetian in Las Vegas, and we just opened Vera Bradley's Hotel in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And the thing to talk about that is that we've got 4 restaurants that are spread throughout the United States that all have the same issues. Number one issue is there's no staff, and in order to get staff, you have to pay astronomical rates, which affect your bottom line. And what we're seeing since we opened the doors is escalating costs across the board, from the cost of a strawberry that's coming from California to the cost of a bottle of wine that's coming from France, if you can get that bottle of wine. And so when you and I talked a couple of weeks ago, I was like, we need to have a conversation about this. So I want to know what other chefs and restaurateurs are doing, because it's a challenge. It's a challenge, and it's something that doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon.
Okay. Yvonne, I know you've gone through a lot of changes. You started the pandemic with 2 locations. You now have 1.
Yeah.
How are you, well, explain the problem you had in Manhattan, and then explain how you're helping, how you overcome these things in Queens.
So sure. So we had a restaurant in Midtown Manhattan. It's still, technically, we still kind of have it, but at this point, negotiations are contentious with the landlord. It was doing well. It's great, but it's the biggest problem that we had is as soon as the pandemic hit, Midtown cleared out. So regardless of how, you know, the product that we put out, regardless of the experience that we're able to give, we weren't able to really bring enough people to sustain the business. And our business was, when we had it, it was great for lunch. You know, we relied on the hotels, on the tourism. We're right by Herald Square. So all the businesses, the co-working spaces, we're surrounded by co-working spaces. So that lunch business was solid. It was great for us. It was our bread and butter. As soon as everybody cleared out and you could work from home, nobody was around. You know, hotels were closed. So we lost that business. Obviously the shopping business also went away because tourism wasn't around. And obviously just at the everybody just working from home means that we had no lunch business. So that business was gone for us. We had to reimagine what we were going to be. So we worked with the Department of Transportation to be able to close the street down in the open street program. We were lucky and unfortunate enough to be the only restaurant on our block. So we didn't have the power to be able to attract people to the area. However, it was good because we were able to take over a large piece of land that wasn't ours. Nobody was contending, you know, right or left of our frontage. So we just took over, and nobody said anything. And we were lucky enough to be able to bring entertainment and bands. And because now we had the space, people were happily spread out. They came out. It was really great. Then we were hit again with just the weather. As soon as the weather hit, it was not good. So for us to be an outdoor space and to not have any kind of protection, things just started getting very slippery, and we just couldn't recover from there. As we were losing that restaurant and we were kind of losing control of what was happening, because it was at that point, as much as we put into it, it wasn't yielding enough because of the weather, because of people not going to Midtown. It became very problematic, and the effort we were putting into it wasn't really yielding the results that we needed to in order to basically just meet our bottom line. Landlord was not negotiating our rent, so we just had to do whatever we could to kind of keep it forward, and that the what we owed to the landlord just kept stacking up. And at what point we just said, listen, we're going to end up losing everything here. So we just kind of let it go. At the same time, we found an opportunity in Forest Hills where some people were hard hit with the pandemic. They lost a lot and they weren't generating the business. So we're able to buy a business that was actually past profitable. But if we could sustain it for long enough, obviously we'd be profitable in the future. So we bought this catering facility, which is in Forest Hills, an event hall, and we got it for fantastic price because people wanted out. They just wanted to get out. Now our problem, like they were saying before, is obviously like costs are going up, everything is going up, labor is very, very short for us. So we're trying to keep it as tight as possible. And where this was a restaurant and event hall before, now we're just doing events and keeping it as tight as possible. So we lost them, but now we're doing a little bit better and a new opportunity.
Great. Peter, if anybody has changed over in the last 18 months, the change in your restaurant location and everything around it has been like you're like the canary in the cage in the coal mine. Tell people how you've adapted a 90-year-old business to last another 90 years?
Amen.
I hate to say it, everything is on the table for us. We went from a 150-seat restaurant to being closed, to doing to go, to reaching out to all our, we're 60% of our business is catering, 50 to 5,000. Overnight, it was gone. We reached out, we have good communications, I would say, wouldn't say great, with our clients. We reached out to everyone and said, we are your solution for hospitality, logistics. Do you need a bathroom? Do you need food? Everything. We ended up bringing a tractor trailer into our parking lot just to feed 3 hospitals. We learned the divide and conquer. Hospitals had 50% more patients, so their food service could barely keep up with their patients. And I learned from them that they want to divide. So we picked up 3 meals a day from hospitals for several months, because if their food service team got COVID, they're out. But it didn't affect their staff. The common denominator, believe it or not, in most organizations is the food service. Everybody, from the higher up to the down to the patients, to everybody would be infected if we got infected. So they divided their food service in half. It was interesting. It was interesting, and it was amazing. The community rallied around us, let us have a tractor trailer. When the restaurant started opening up, we have an older clientele. They got very nervous, so they wanted to be outside. We put a tent in the parking lot. You name it, we've changed everything. Our banquet hall, I heard about a banquet hall. We turned it into a assembly line, 4 assembly lines, 35 feet long, just packing breakfasts and lunches. We've learned a lot. I will tell you, at the end, this is not, I feel like I went through a hell week with the Marines, but it's lasting 18 months, because as we all have said and feel, I'm doing okay today. That's for today. Can you get a product? Can you get wine? Can you get a delivery? And you can't get upset with anybody, because we're all in the same boat. Did all our staff leave the state? Are they on unemployment? Do they not have childcare? Do they have a significant other who's autoimmune and they can't risk killing them? I'm being a little dramatic, but do you want to be the one who kids are getting sick now, and the elderly? I hate to say pivot, because between to-go promotions, tents, reached out to all our clients. We tried everything. I was on every single Zoom call that you can imagine, just to stay alive. The greatest day of my career was January 2020. I signed in New York State. It's called a NYS 45. How many staff members you had? I hit 100 full-time staff members and over 150 part-time. Yes, 65 days later, I was down to 18. I let 230 people go. Depression, yeah, I was there. And you can't even go see a therapist. It's great. And I hate to say, we all have to be careful, because the biggest, one of the biggest coping things that we can do is go to the bar, and there's nobody else at the bar. So we sold liquor. I never thought we got great deals. I mean, great deals. We had it's about 180 cases of wine, because the wine season's coming up in wedding season's coming up in April. I'm just still going through that wine now, and it was $10, $15, $20 a bottle. We were giving wine tastings on the sidewalk. Thank God the state of New York is not on this call. Yeah. So but I will tell you, we kind of got through it. People laughed. They're like, "Are you having wine tastings on the sidewalk?" Yeah. Just take your keys out of your car, okay? Larry, we tried crazy things. We're now, and I don't want to say too much on the call, but we're actually talking to one of our competitors now who's on this call about a future expansion of our company. So I got to tell you, this has been crazy. Half of me says, I'm done, I'm retiring. The other side of me says, this is the most exciting time of our career with the PPP and the rescue. We're actually doing a third more. We're going to do about $1 million, less than $1 million of construction, new windows that open up. So the restaurant is now feels al fresco-ish. So many different things. We're putting in a to-go section, a 10 by 10, and expanding our product lines to go. Do I think this is going to be day and night? No, but it'll add $100,000 here, $100,000 there, and it's not really adding to our kitchens.
Thank you, Peter.
For going along.
No. You definitely sound like someone who's ready to retire.
Yeah.
You're making an awful lot of plans for somebody who's on his way out. Nick, I talk about the changes you're seeing in at Via Forno, and what I'd like you to do is not parrot what everybody else has said, but talk about staffing. Staffing is the thorn in every restaurateur's side. Take the ball.
It's become much more important now than it ever was to find people that can not just multitask, but do different jobs at the same time. It's not just different things within a job, like a server who can, run food and take an order. You're talking about now a server who can bartend, somebody in the kitchen that can work two stations at the same time, and everybody's just kind of have to slide back and forth from one side to the other. It's extremely important. And I don't have numbers to back this up, but I can guess that a lot of the restaurants that didn't work, aside from possibly location where they were not in the right place, Midtown Manhattan, everybody disappeared. It's owners that weren't fully committed. They weren't hands-on day to day, because you're the free labor. You're there. You have to start picking it up, serving tables, bartending yourself, cooking, whatever it is that you can do. It's all hands on deck, like everybody has said. And if you don't have that, you're going to lose something somewhere along the way. And of course, the biggest thing also with the staffing is investment in the business. If they're coming and picking up a paycheck and going home, they're not going to fully invest in what it is that's needed to do those extra jobs. Like Peter said, when all of this started, I had many fewer employees, but I gave them a choice. Do you want to work? Do you not want to work? And the people that ended up staying were people that were fully invested, that did deliveries for me in their own cars, and knew how to bartend, taking takeout orders, coming in early, staying late, just anything extra that needed to be done. And they could have very easily stayed home, collected unemployment, and probably would have made just as much as they would have made staying with me and working a 10-hour day or an 8-hour day. That's the most important part. If they're not a part of that group and that family, for lack of a better term, they're not going to go above and beyond to help you. And this is going to have to continue for a while, because we're going to ride this roller coaster at least another 6 months, 8 months, a year. This is not ending anytime soon.
I tend to agree with Nick on one point here. Besides being in the business, we eat out a lot. And we see that the successful restaurants are those that the myopic employee, the waiter that has his 5 tables and only looks after those 5 tables, those restaurants are going to suffer. There's a wonderful restaurant who's not on this call in Bronxville It's any person that walks by your table. If they see you looking around or they see you searching for something, that employee will stop and say, can I get your waitress? Can I get your waiter? Do you need something? Those are the places that are going to succeed in the future. Fred, oh, wait a second. I got away from Matt. Matt, what's going
Well,
on?
Larry, we got an interesting question from the audience. If I'm paying my new or low-level employees $15 an hour, what do I pay the people that have been with me for years?
Okay, who wants to handle that one? Okay, Peter.
If I may, every position and every employee needs to be taken as a case-by-case basis. And the reason I say that is be careful. We don't want to chase or make money the number one issue. Those employees will leave you at a drop of a hat. So we've given people days off. We've given them bonuses. We've taken care of their groceries. There are non-wage things that you can do that give a little more intangibility. We've given credit cards out. We've had people come in. Listen, I know you can't feed your family tonight, okay? And you need to cook for your family. Could you do me a favor? Would you mind coming in at 5 o'clock with a family of 6? We'll feed them. You to Nick's point, that's a connection. Wait a second, did you feed my family of 6? No cost at all. So be careful with money. People, I forget the expression, if somebody could help me out. People go to a company but leave the boss. And if it's all going to be about money, it's all about money. Then you don't have the relationship that Nick was talking about. We are paying bonuses. We have given raises. We're guaranteeing people 40 hours or 40 hours plus overtime. Overtime has been a big thing. It's a great way to reward people for extra time to get paid time and a half. You can't do both. You can't give them a raise and give them regular overtime. That's very, very expensive and it's not sustainable. I hope that helped.
Yes. Anybody want to add to that? Yvonne, I know that you're very, very, very involved in fair pay.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. So we got involved with a program called High Roads Kitchen, and they're a great program that kind of puts a couple of things together where it's government grants. They're giving anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000 per restaurant to encourage people to basically pay everybody a fair wage. So it's not a tipped wage necessarily. You pay them the minimum wage, and then tips are on top of that. But they're very good right now at trying to change the regulations so that we can actually, tips that are going to the restaurant are distributed to everyone. So the kitchen could actually make a little bit of money from that. But you start everybody at a fair wage. Everybody is minimum wage no matter what. And when you learn about the history of tipping, basically, you start to kind of understand where that's coming from. With us, just to kind of hit on the point of just employees, we're not open all week. We're open a very limited time right now. We're still kind of, I guess, playing it safe and just doing events. But when we need staff, like we're paying up to $35 plus per person for a couple of hours if you're trying to outsource people. Like normally I can get some people that are, I have some employees that are full-time, that are $17 an hour. But when I need somebody that's a little bit more qualified, and I'm not talking like, executive, excellent, it's going to do my payroll, it's going to do like food. No, I mean, like, just come in, help me execute this party, do what we need to do. We're paying up to $35 per hour for that individual. So if that's the competition that we're up against, it's kind of hard. If I'm an individual and I'm just cooking on my own, and I can go to a restaurant and make $17 an hour, well, I would expect like 17 to 20, I would say, for a semi full-time job with some overtime on top of that. Or I can work 3 days a week, make $35 an hour, and make the same, if not more money. Obviously, like what they said before, like it's not all about money. So the character, the quality of candidate that's going to come to that is going to be very different. But I'm also having a hard time finding those employees that I can train and put it in time and effort into. And I come from like we're involved with a program called CCAP, Careers in Culinary Arts program. Fred is familiar with Joyce and that basically encourages kids to get into cooking. But even those students, I'm having a hard time explaining to them how this difficult of a job is going to pay them nothing in 10, 15 years after they put, the blood, sweat, and tears into it. So it's a complicated issue to get new people into it and just to say, coming in, the water's fine, when we know the water's not fine. This is a hard job. So it's difficult from both ends. I don't know if I have a point here. It's a hard.
It's not a point. It's a problem. It's a problem because now it's not, it was very easy to gauge wages before. And there was a definite way of earning. Now it's sort of jumbled. How, there's a restaurant in Scarsdale that at the bottom of every bill, there's a 3% surcharge, and that money is going to the kitchen staff. All that money goes directly to the kitchen staff to bolster, because what you're getting is in many restaurants, the waiters are making more than the managers.
Sure, but Larry, is that even fair? Like as a consumer, is that fair to ask the consumer to pay the 3% to pay the employees more when and this is my opinion. So if I'm wrong, this is my opinion. But the reason why we're paying people the less than good wages, when you go into technology, you go into any other field, and you have like a considerable wage increase as you move along. The rent is increasing, all your cost of goods are increasing. So once you start looking at labor, you're like, I can't afford to pay you anymore. I would love to, but I can't. So then maybe the problem isn't that we don't have the money to pay employees more for the work that they're doing, is the other things that are part of the equation aren't right. And maybe instead of trying to focus on the labor and the labor shortage and like, how do we actually move the system in such a way where you can actually pay people more and take away from, and I don't have the answer. I'm just asking the question. It's how do we actually change that formula? Because it's not, as a restaurateur, sometimes I'm not excited to like tell a kid, you should get into cooking. It's fantastic. You'll love it. It's this beautiful and romantic idea that I bought into. But it's difficult to get people into that. Again, with like a lot of my people are from construction. Construction is the same thing. They're making so much more money, and people appreciate that they're in, and it's difficult to argue with that.
Right, but what is the formula? Then you're right. A lot of people look at the 3%, and in Scarsdale, people are going to look at the 3% and go, okay, it's not a big deal. Right. But in a lot of neighborhoods, that is a big deal. But that money has to come from someplace. And the problem is, I'll be right with you, Nick. We just saw an article. Mike Gansel just sent an article to me yesterday from the New York Times, who talked about the changes in the restaurant industry and that there are changes that have to be made, and we're going to lose the restaurant system that we had before. That's how this whole conversation between Will and I started, that the system is broken and how do we fix it? And that's why we're here today. Everybody's got problems. We're going to continue having problems. How do we turn this around? How do you, 4 years ago, chopped meat was $1.99 a pound, and now it's $5.99 a pound, $6.99 a pound. That's a hamburger price. How do you sell a $25 hamburger out of a diner? It doesn't work. Something has to be fixed here. Nick, you raised your hand before.
Yeah, I wanted to say two things. First, what Peter was talking about when you asked the question about bringing somebody in and then everybody else that's already working there. I think the first most important thing is to take care of the people you've already got. If you're worried about one of your current employees being worried about what a new employee is going to make, if there's a a similar level of work experience or responsibility, then you're probably not taking care of that person that's already with you enough. And you should probably consider them first, because even if you gave them a little bit more money, they'd probably do a lot more work for you in appreciation of that. Secondly, for Yvonne and for the comment about the 3% on the bottom of the bill, I think it's a wash, because if you can't afford to pay the employees and you have to raise your menu prices, the customer is still going to pay it. They're still spending that money. Whereas now you're kind of, I guess, buying yourself some time because you're paying them the lower rate. The customer is basically paying a little bit extra for their food when they come in, and the kitchen is getting that. So rather than you having to raise somebody by 50 cents or $1 and now paying that every hour, whether or not they come in, it's almost like a pay to play kind of thing. They're coming in, getting their food, and then, helping you out with your kitchen. I mean, I see restaurants taking the 3% for the credit cards now too. On the bottom of all the bills. If you pay cash, this is your total. If you pay with a credit card, this is your total. And I saw that once or twice before the pandemic here and there. Now it's on almost every bill when I go out to eat, it's on the bottom of that bill. The kitchen 3% is definitely less. I've seen that in the Scarsdale restaurant, Larry, that you're talking about. One or two other places, but it's probably going to be more prevalent too, in order to try and help, because kitchen staff is definitely underpaid in comparison to everybody else in the restaurant, especially the servers who are making crazy amounts of money on their check and then getting cash tips that they're probably not claiming.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
Anyone can chime in this experience. Like, if you do 3% for the kitchen, do you notice a difference in the gratuity for the servers?
I can't speak for the rest of the world, but I see the 3% for the kitchen, and I say the kitchen is turning out a great product. And I would, coming from, I had my first server job when I was 4 years old, bringing bread baskets at my grandmother's hotel to people's tables. So I know what a server goes through. I never, ever kneecap a server for something else I have to pay someplace else. It's a cost of eating out now. And these restaurants haven't reached that point yet where I have to think twice about eating out. So no, I have never given the money for my waiter to the kitchen instead and deducted it. And if there was a deduction where waiters started to grumble, the restaurateur, who does not want to lose them right now, would adjust. Will, I know you have strong opinions on this.
I got strong opinions on everything that's getting talked about right now, Larry.
Okay,
and I mean,
I know.
it's great. It's great to see Nick. I haven't seen him since we were at CAA together like 2 decades ago. So I mean, it's been a minute. A couple things. So Marcel Vierna and Scott Wolf on the West Coast, he put a 4% service charge on his checks. He told me he saw gratuity drop by like 2%. So the 20% tip went to 18%. The staff wasn't upset about it because the service charge covered benefits for everybody and added some supplemental wages to the kitchen. That's one example. I don't know if that does the same thing for everybody, but that's what he saw in his 2 restaurants in San Fran and Los Angeles. There's an elephant in the room, Larry, and I need you to cut me off if I start to get a little passionate about this one.
Don't worry.
When the pandemic started and everybody was unable to work and all the restaurants shut down, we completely I'm holding myself back from using some expletives. We completely forgot about our migrant workforce, which was in both New York City and pretty much every city around the world. And so many employees who have been the cornerstone and the legs that support our businesses were unable to claim unemployment insurance because they didn't necessarily have the legal right to stay in the United States. And many, 90% of them went home. And so now we're in this place that all the culinary schools have been closed. They just reopened. The quality of people that are at the culinary schools, as Nick and I can attest to, has dropped tremendously. So you're getting a person out of a culinary school, whether it's Johnson & Wales or CIA or NECI or any of the other ones, who's underqualified and maybe better suited for an extern position than be ready to hop on a line. and we don't have the workforce which has supported the New York City and other city industry for the past couple hundred years. And so what you're getting is people who don't understand the value of a dollar and people who are chasing the greatest dollar. So we're losing the loyalty and integrity from a staff member that comes to your restaurant, because if you hire a new line cook at $20 an hour and his friend's working down the street and sees that he can get $25 down the street, he's going to go take the $25 an hour job down the street. We're losing, honestly, some of the work ethic that you see from staff that's been bustling and hustling the lines of New York over the past couple of decades. The work ethic, showing up on time, I mean, busting their rear end throughout shift. And it's a sad state, because not only is the quality of the staff not the same as it was before, not only are the people that have been supporting our businesses. I mean, every restaurant I've ever opened, I've called up a line cook from a previous restaurant and he's brought 15 friends and I've opened the restaurant. I can't call them anymore. Yeah, I Venmoed some of them money during the pandemic to be like, hey, how's your family? I know you're back in Oaxaca. I know you're back in Mexico City. Here's some cash to get you through. But like, none of them are here. None of them can come back. So, it's a bigger fundamental issue than treating your employee right or some service charges. It's, what are we going to do about the fact that there's not the employees that have been supporting our industry forever?
Okay.
Sorry, I don't mean to sound so passionate about it.
No.
I mean,
It's a great point.
Passionate. It's only your life.
Yeah.
It's only your life. Don't worry about it. Matt is waving at me again.
Well, Larry, we got a very interesting question from Fred earlier. And he's asking, doesn't the restaurant grant money cover any of the increased expenses that everyone here has been talking about?
I don't know, Nick, did you get the restaurant grant money?
Yeah, but I mean, it covers everything. It's there for all sorts of stuff. If you're doing well and you're making money and keeping your head above water, then sure, that'll cover those extra expenses and you'll make a little less, but at least you're not going out of pocket. But for anyone who's just treading water, now you have these increases. They have the employee expenses and rent expenses that they can't cover. That money disappears in the blink of an eye.
Let me just break in for 1 second here. I understand that, speaking to other restaurateurs, the people who curtailed, shrunk their business tremendously or closed for a few months, went on a hiatus for a few months, their losses came out higher than the other restaurants who stayed open all through the time, and their expenses were less, and they actually got more money in their pockets through the grants than the people like a guy like Peter or a guy like Nick, who stayed open all the time, and the money was coming in dribs and drabs, but so were the expenses. Do you find that to be the truth? The guys who closed for 2-3 months.
Larry, just one quick comment on that briefly. For those fortunate to get their revitalization grant, the other thing that everybody needs to realize when they say something like, can't the grant allow you to pay people more money? The grant will run out. And then what happens when the grant runs out and you're stuck proving a business model with $30 an hour wages? Like that's the thing that I'm thinking about, which is like, yeah, you know what, we can use at each of our restaurants, we got small revitalization grants and we've been using that to float the business and pay our rent on time. But like the second that money runs out, now if we increase our wages to $20 an hour to combat people sitting at home, going bowling and drinking Bud Light for $20.50 an hour, then we're stuck in a situation where we now have a business model that doesn't work.
Larry, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to caution everybody, if it's the PP money we're talking about or the restaurant rescue fund, keep it sweet and simple. Separate account for food, beverage, and labor, and supplies and rent. Very, very, very simple. That will give you the cash flow if we're if we're frugal, if we're crafty, to upgrade our curb appeal so people know that we're open and we're communicating that we're open and we have to go, or putting a sidewalk in, or making our spaces a little more flexible so we can do private parties where people are comfortable. Be very careful with that money. You don't want to confuse it And it took me a while to understand food, beverage, payroll, rent, supplies. You will not get into any trouble if that's all you have a separate account and that's all you use it for. Now, to Will's point, is that will give you cash flow to invest, not to pay the guy, $30. That's unsustainable. But what is sustainable is working on your POS system for e-commerce. What is sustainable is training. Imagine sending one of your managers to training school, whatever sales training school, and you go to sales training school. We did it 8 years ago. Within an 18-month period, and I hate to say Bob's not on the call. Bob was our sales training. I landed a $500,000 account. Today, that account is almost a $2 million account, and it's a hospital. Who would have thought professional sales training for a restaurateur caterer? I got to tell you, it's paid for itself. So we have opportunities that I think we haven't had. I haven't had in a 40-year career. I haven't had these opportunities to invest. We've just invested into two, conveyor belt dishwashers. I got to tell you, what two men can do in 30 minutes, one man can't do in 3 to 4 hours. It was an investment. Each one was about $20,000. I'll make it back in about a year. So I would be. I'm with everybody that we have to be careful. But in the future, I have one less sanitation guy. We also, and if I may, one more second, we have the youngest staff we have ever had. Our attrition rate right now for high schoolers is 50%. Half of them don't work out. I will tell you, I have a lot of faith in the generation come up. These young men and these young women with extra training and cultural sensitivity and TLC are doing great, and they're not busters. To William's point, we have to treat them, our migrant workers. I'm sorry, you're a 35-year-old man, and Will, you're a bus boy. How do we talk to people that way? Our system is broken, and the West Coast has tried it. Dane Myers has tried it. This is an opportunity for all of us. Without our migrant workers and without treating people respectfully, it's a dysfunctional system that we're part of. I don't know if it means that we're getting different dishwashers, the machine itself, or kiosks. I don't know what the answer is, or if it's a dozen different answers. And I'm not being political. I'm with you, Will. Give me the evil eye and I'll stop. But we have to take care of our staff. And just because immigrants in 2015 to 2020 was an ugly word, I guarantee, I'm looking around, everybody within the last generation or two is an offspring from an immigrant. And it was just either it was a straight line, it was understandable to be, there was a different way to become an immigrant, and the economics were different. We have an opportunity that we probably will never have in 40 years. We really, really do. To reinvest in our industry, if it's low tech, high tech, have redundancy. The kids, I got to tell you right now, I've never seen kids this great. The ones that stay, the 50% that we say have a great life because they need every other weekend off because their social calendar, but their parents have to live with those kids, not us.
Okay. Listen, I want to cover just one more little facet on how we stay alive. And I'm going to use Peter's restaurant as an example. Peter's menu used to be a book. It is now 2 sides of a page. It is now 2 sides of a page. And you want to know something? I don't think he's had a drop off in customers. People still order, people still enjoy. How do you deal in a restaurant check that used to be $35 a person when a steak is $40-something? How do you adjust your menus to meet the pocketbooks and the tastes of your clientele? Who's creative? Crickets.
I'll do it.
Peter.
I'll ask a couple people real quick. I got a question for you. Do they come out for the burger exactly the way it is, or the steak exactly what it is, or do they come out to have a good time and have food that they can't cook at home? It's, you know, the unique selling proposition. Is it a package? Is it your decor? Is it, hey, Ivan, hey, how you doing, Larry? How's it going? How are the kids? Nice to see you. Is it the cappuccino that they don't have a $10,000 cappuccino machine? My question to everybody on the call, what are people coming out for?
Okay. Yvonne.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer this very easily for us in our business model. Right now we're events, you know, where nobody wants to be creative when it comes to when you have, you know, 50, 75, 150, 200 people coming. They want to keep it very simple. There's a steak, a fish, a chicken, a salad. You know, it's very, for us, it's been very straightforward. When we have smaller gatherings, then it's a little bit more creative. As a chef, obviously, like, it's not the most fun to you know, everybody wants the roasted chicken, the filet mignon, or the salmon. That's pretty much our three staples. And it's either a roasted chicken or like a chicken franchise situation. But sometimes it is difficult, and I have to understand that people are there for a celebration. They're there for the enjoyment of, like we just said, everybody's getting together for a celebration. So as long as the food is consistent, solid, they don't want anything to be over the top. They want something to be good, in our case in particular.
Okay,
so we keep it very simple.
Let me pose this question a different way. Exactly. Will and I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. At one point, he was opening restaurants, and the profit margins were X. And now the profit margins are 1/4 of that. How do you keep absorbing price increases? And if a price increase on beef is 60%, and you could only charge 5% more on your menu, how could you not make substitutions or simplify or do what a lot of fine restaurants do, use inexpensive ingredients and prepare them in a way that makes it worth the price? How do you do these things? What do you know? Maybe I posed that question incorrectly, but how do you absorb these massive price increases in everything and only raise your menu prices $1 or $2? Hello?
I mean, for us, we just change. If, for example, you're saying like the meat in particular, like we've shifted
the meat, the vegetables, the meat.
Yeah.
What hasn't gone up that goes through your restaurant? Your employees, your meat, your produce, your paper goods, everything has gone up in price except your prices to this consumer. So how do you absorb that stuff?
For us, we just shift. Chicken for us has been pretty consistent. You know, salmon has been pretty consistent. Meat has gone up and down, and we've changed a couple of, like, we go from filet to just different cuts of meat depending on what we're able to find. It's crazy to know that, like, even ribeyes sometimes will be a little bit cheaper than a filet, or whatever meat that we can find in that particular case. We just have to explain to the guests. But like I said before, we're sticking to, like, if we're doing vegetables, we look at, you know, carrots, potatoes, onions, things that are, for the most part, pretty consistent and low in cost. We've been able to, we actually bought plates for what it's worth. We bought nicer plates, because if you put an item that isn't like the prettiest looking on a really nice plate, it makes it look really nice. We redecorated the restaurant, and the restaurant is now much prettier, and people look at the restaurant and they don't look at the food so much, which, again, like, the food has to be consistent, but it doesn't have to be over the top crazy. As long as the space is really beautiful, people are and the service is good, and the company is fantastic, and like the right vibe is set, the food just has to be consistent and good, not extraordinary in our case for events. So that's the
Okay.
changes that we've made.
Can I ask,
Those are the changes.
of the operators, have you increased individual prices across the board? Have you recipeed so you have different portions on the entire dish? Say it's still a 14-ounce portion, but it's a little less steak, a little more vegetable. Have you raised prices on single items or across the board?
We've done across the board.
Us too.
More individual. It's most of the menu, but there's just certain things that an increase wouldn't fly.
Will?
But the big change, I think, the big change is, like you said, recipes and whatnot. It's not so much, the quality of that piece of meat that you have, but it's other things like you're making a meatball. If you have, ricotta cheese in it and Parmesan cheese in it, are you using that top quality ricotta cheese, or can you buy the one level down? It's a bigger price difference, it's a lot lower, and there's no noticeable difference because it's mixed into something that's then being slowly cooked in sauce for hours, and save $1 or $2 within a recipe with those ingredients. Some things you can't do it with. You're buying a filet, you're buying a ribeye, you're going to see that difference. Even if you put a sauce on it, you're not going to be able to change many of the ingredients. But some of those stewed items and things like that, for sure, you can, play with which ingredients you're using, especially like, some cheeses, and imported Parmesan cheese is $11 a pound. Domestic is $5 a pound.
Yeah.
Makes a big difference.
Yeah, and Peter, you never touched on one of the things that are your hot point: measurements, no waste. Can you expand on that?
Well, that's why I was asking. We found that everybody's talking about food prices going up. So we're doing it across the board. Even if a product didn't go up, we can't raise to, I apologize, who said about the filet going up, can't raise the price that much on the filet. But I can on the chicken, $1 or $2, and that actually really does offset.
Yeah.
We have, and I don't want to use a certain brand, but there's a company out there, it's called Studio. They automatically migrate their latest prices to your recipe. So we set up our recipes, tag, as long as you're buying from that company, tag in all the recipe items, and it gives you a food cost. I'm going to tell you, we were running in first quarter this year and second quarter a better food cost than we ever have, because of a limited menu, because of price increases, because of almost no waste, and because everything is measured, everything is looked at, everything is counted, everything. I don't know if when we get super busy again, if we can keep this up. I'm proud of the team. They really, really worked on it. Even beverage. We went through every single drink, every single wine. We do nothing for ego anymore. We stopped our ego shots. Oh, we have to have a Sincere from bullshit. Not at $15, $16 a bottle, and we're selling it for $14 a glass. We're getting the lesser Sincere and charging $16. So portion control for us has been huge. It really, really has. But the pricing out of everything and double checking pours, double checking portions has made a huge difference. And like I don't mean to repeat myself, but it was phenomenal. In one of our cafes, we just raised our prices across the board because some items, it was just too much to calculate the price of everything and how it's going to go up. Baloney.
Okay.
5 to 12% across the board.
Guys, I appreciate everybody coming out today. We've been through a lot today. Changes in personnel, technical difficulties. We've run through the gamut today, but I still think that you guys put on an excellent you were an excellent panel. You got your message across. What I'd like to do before we say goodbye is go around the horn and give your final takeaways. Yvonne, why don't you start?
Sure. So I think we've all been through through hell in the past year and a half, but I think it's in crazy opportunities or crazy moments like this where the best opportunities do arise. And I think
Okay.
we have an opportunity to change the system, to do things better. Everybody on this call has been in the restaurant business for a bit. And I think at the end of the day, I'm very optimistic that we can fix this, and it's going to be a great restaurant system in the future.
All right. Will.
I'm with Yvonne on that one. I think that there's a lot of opportunities. I think that while we can find cost savings on menu engineering and with what's going on, I do think that we need to really holistically evaluate what we're charging for stuff and the cost of the American diner and how those costs will increase to continue to support our industry.
Peter.
I think I've spoken enough, but I think this is to everybody on the panel. This is a monumental time for us to redefine our industry. Who supports us? How do we support our staff and our people and our community? But really, what are we selling? How are we servicing? We can't be all things to all people, and we have to make a living.
Okay. Nick.
I agree with that with Peter. Everybody here, I think, has, while we're all in the same business, in the same industry, we have our lanes that we're in and the things that we do. You really got to focus on what it is that people are coming to you specifically for, and do that the best that you can. And then slowly branch it back out again and regrow what it is that you do as time goes on and as you see people what they're looking for again in your restaurants, because those that just think that they're going to plow forward and maybe just raise some prices are going to continue to see very hard times because people are only going to pay so much for what it is that we're doing.
All right, Matt.
The thing that really struck me is the difficulty in labor, and should we be changing our immigration policies, and how does that affect getting workers? And this country, if I'm thinking most of us have lived through those times, this country was built on immigration, and if we don't have it, it's not going to grow.
Okay, Fred. Unmute, Fred.
It was a deep breath. He was ready to lay it on us. Like,
Yes. Okay. Are you unmuted, Fred?
No, he's not.
Okay. We'll come back to you, Fred. So listen, guys, and viewers and people are going to see this video. This is a difficult point in restaurant history right now. This is I wish it was a fork in the road, but it's a fork with like about 42 different prongs. And we as an industry have got to figure out the right way to go. You've been given a lot of ideas here, and everybody here is always open to talk to people who are interested in learning and swapping ideas. We have lost Fred completely. So I just want to thank everyone for coming out and helping us out. L. Sashin and Associates and the other producer, Total Food Service, who has just disappeared, and our sponsor, Valiant Technologies. All thank you for attending today and helping us out. And we want to wish Laura a speedy recovery, and just everyone else, stay positive and test negative. Bye, folks.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Have a great day. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye now.